Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soul Deep Science podcast, where we talk about all things having to do with psychomoralistic, seeking to restore the image of God in individuals, in marriages, and in families. I'm your host, Kyle Copey, and I'm joined, as always, by my friend and mentor, Dr. G.C. Dilsaver. Dr. Dilsaver, how are you today?
I'm fine, Kyle. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Last time we were talking about some of the terms that are in the psychomoralistic system, and I think it's important for people just to get a general understanding of these because these apply across the board. I guess we could just start with the term mental itself. Based on my own personal experience, growing up, we used to use the word mental as like a pejorative. We were little kids on the playground and we see that crazy kid over there and we say, oh, that kid's mental or something like that. But this actually has a clinical definition. It has a definition that's important for the intersection of the brain and the soul. So could you just kind of break open that term mental for us? What do we mean by mental and maybe mental health?
So you're saying colloquially mental meant that you were probably in grade school, someone had emotional problems. So not being able to control those emotions, those passions. And that's really what, for the vast majority of the time, that's the symptomology even of what they call mental disorder. So we say mental, you're borrowing a term straight from the system. They're defining that. So the mental health system, behavioral health system, all these things are really, I suppose, euphemisms really, because they don't really refer to anything specifically. They're kind of a made-up category that allows them to call it a science, a clinical science profession. But they don't define what mental is. And again, with the nosology, the classification of diseases that's done by in the DSM, it's a nosology based on symptomology, which again is tantamount to quackery. But again, if everything is defined down to the physiological, then you're not going to ever find the spiritual, ideological causes of mental or behavioral aberrations or symptomology. So that idea of mental, again, the system, the mental health system treats a person, bottom line, as a physiological entity, does not recognize a spiritual entity, and yet caters to a spiritual entity, which is the ego or the pride and self-love complex. So that's what they actually cater to. They actually are working spiritually. You can't help but do that. You can't even think without being spiritual. So it's part of the element. But this reduction down then to the physiological means the mental has to be just purely physiological. And again, indeed, that's what the mental health system holds and espouses officially. In the 1980s, as per President's decree, so it is written, so it be done, under Bush 1, that decade was declared the decade of the brain. And what that really meant was specifically because of the electronic magnetic imagery that advancements at that time, and they're still with us increasing, we could actually see what's going on in the brain and physiologically. And so the hope in the 80s was in the field of psychology, clinical psychology, you can see in the DSM, it's just this expectation that we're going to be able to find out exactly what the physiological causes of all mental disorder is. It's as simple as that. We just don't have enough information about the brain yet. We haven't seen it clearly enough. We don't have enough quantifiable evidence. Well, that decade of the brain, like most president's decrees, went south. There was no great discoveries. Everybody was waiting for bated breath. And as the architect of the DSM said at the time, the promoter of this imaging of the brain and of disorder said, we're still decades away from discovering this. For him, it was just a question of, we have to get better imagery. This hope, this kind of absurd blind faith. They haven't found it, and they're never going to find it because why? You can't image the soul. You can't image the mental. You can image aspects of it. Let's define mental then in a Thomistic, or at least wise a definitive way we can make distinctions. So mental being, I would say, is the defining it psychomoralytically is going to be the intersect between the soul and the material, between the soul and the brain. If you will, that gray area. But where does that, and how that works and interplays is a fascinating thing, and you can see some of it. We can't see all of it. You can't see the spiritual elements of it. Now, to explicate that mental, maybe in an example of how the spiritual and the physiological intersect. The phenomenon of a autistic savant, for instance, so that's like Rain Man, someone who has incredible genius in one area. I can find the prime number, forever, and they're amazed at what they can do, sometimes mathematically, and yet they have a hard time tying their shoe, which I think that's probably pretty normal. I mean, don't we all? But
I use Velcro myself.
There you go. That's it. Yeah. We slip on cowboy boots as always.
There you go.
But so they have this incredible genius in this one area that even the greatest mathematicians can't even come close to, or like a Total Recall musically, and they can play some on the piano is phenomenal. So now what's that say? It makes sense if you see that the organicity of the brain, as incarnate beings in the image of God, rational evolutionary beings, but we differ from the angels because we depend on our organicity. There's a limitation for us to receive knowledge. See? So, and then, or express then the intelligence of the soul, or that's where it is. The soul is where that power of intelligence, the power of the mental powers come from. As well as all powers of a being. So the soul has those powers there. Now they're not damaging the soul unless some effects of the original sin, what have you. But those powers aren't what we call damage, but they can find damage then in the organicity. So for whatever reason, it can be something in birth, what have you, anything that can cause some deficiency. Now, so if there's so let's say the brain has a lot of damage. Many of the areas are not able to respond properly and function properly to be a conduit, go between reality, receiving the real, choosing the truth, and receiving the truth and choosing the good. They're not a good conduit between those two things, and so. But you still have that spiritual element. It's like a fluid element, if you will, that's seeking some expression. So if there's an area that's intact, areas that are intact, others that aren't, you would think it makes sense that would be funneled into that one area, and it's just just fulfills it to a superlative degree.
Because it needs an outlet, right?
Yes, exactly right. And the beautiful thing is you see this. I think the first time I ever saw this was really clinically. I'm working at, back in the day, Camarillo State Hospital, but California. Lana Del Rey sings about Camarillo in a new song, by the way. But it's that was the mental hospital there. And you go down there, and plus we had these, severely retarded, and the whole population I was working with. And, it's pretty sad because, it's really not a good environment. I mean, we should do a lot better, obviously, as it has. The church should be doing that and having them in an environment where, we're in an environment where they could actually also, help teach us how to be spiritual and all that. I always say it's a monastic situation, because it was amazing that there's a genius in all of them, and you see it there in that spark, and so it's an amazing thing and something would be valued and appreciated. So that's the first time I saw it, and then I realized, time and time again. But you can see it in people that are very mainstream, but a lot of times people have intelligence in one area. So you have an engineering intelligence, mathematical intelligence, but you may not have you be very bad at social prosody. Or someone like me has a verbal intelligence, but has, I let my wife, balance a checkbook.
That's right. I want to make a crude analogy, if I will, so just to kind of understand this. It's bad spirituality to say that the soul is inside the body. That's a different question, but I want to say the situation is like this. So you have a very talented race car driver, let's say Jeff Gordon or Mario Andretti or someone like that, and I would compare them to the soul. There's no damage in the soul per se, but you put that man in a what the kids call a hoopty, a beat up old 1970s Chevrolet truck that's barely hanging on or something like that. There's not a lot that Jeff Gordon sitting in that driver's seat could do for that truck. So that truck is kind of like the damaged body, the damaged organicity is what you're saying. Would that be an okay analogy to make?
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. It's crude though. There's a lot. So yeah, but you're mixing up, of course, it's body or there's body within a body, and limitations that body might have, but yet anyway. So it's okay though. But yeah, it's but
you're not going to use it in one of your books, right?
You're talking about Mario Andretti, like what, the fifth? I mean. There's a lot of them, right? That's why you know him, Kyle, because I know Mario Andretti, but that's like
the long line.
Guy. Yeah, but yeah. So it is. So it's this. So the point being, though, I guess in this case, is that we want to say that the soul having the powers of the intellect, the powers in there, inform the physiological and allow the physiological to be a conduit toward man's highest his act to, again, receive the real, ascend to the truth and choose the good as the Imago Dei. So what happens then, of course, if somebody does have a lot of damage? They have that very severe mental retardation, that kind of thing, and and again, and we don't want, and that's why I really despise when anybody says something. You kind of remind me of that when you said mental, but or people says a retard, like what really? So like, hey buddy, you know what? All you had to do is have your oxygen cut off for a couple seconds at birth, and you'd be there. But that's what we all are. So we also realize that too. So what? So what? Our intelligence or our physical abilities, it's gift. It's nothing. It's not what matters. And so it doesn't matter how intelligent I am or how skillful or athletic. That doesn't matter. What matters is the human spirit. Because and what's that mean then? That a person that can be very debilitated could be choosing on the most deepest level, God, choosing to say yes to I am. And that's the spiritual element. And it doesn't take a high IQ to do that. It's the simplest possible process. It's a binary process. It's yes or no. It's that existential decision that the angels made, Eve made. That's the human element. That's what's the most important. It's the spirit. It's the choosing. It's the love, and that's why we have it wrong again if we're going to be working with, for instance, those that are very debilitated, and think that that it's not collaborative. That's something that we're there to be able to learn as well. So, but seeing that is very important, because if the mental health system doesn't see this, then what are you? How are you valued? And they value basically the what it means to be mentally healthy, or on that spectrum of mental health, means that you're functional. At best, you're successful. At least functional, at least not causing any drain on people. And if you become dysfunctional, become a functional dysfunctional. In other words, become a victim, become part of the system. We'll take care of you. See, so that's good. I need people to take care of me. It's my job. You become part of the system. That's your job. You're officially dysfunctional, and we're taking care of you. So it's all part of the whole matrix, if you will. And it's dehumanizing. So it's always going to be dehumanizing when you see that a person is just the sum of his parts. And if I may give another plug, I'm going to give a plug for a popular culture today. But there was a song a few years ago by this group called Highly Suspect. But anyway, it was called "My Name Is Human." But the whole point of the song is that that I'm human and I've come down from above along the lines, and it's really about being more than human. I come down from the stars. What they're doing, they're expressing that human dignity, imago Dei dignity, who we are, and really against oppression, against enslavement. And so you see the world hungry for that. And again, the key to it is seeing the human person for what they truly are, as a seeker of truth, and choosing the good. And that is a question of love, of human spirit, of courage. So you tell me who has more courage? It doesn't take, it doesn't take courage. Or a lot of stuff we've done doesn't take courage. Or people applaud. Does it take courage, or is it just because you're good at it? What takes courage? It's that person that is really able to continue to love, even though in the very throes of defeat and humiliation and sorrow, even though all odds are against him. That's the hero. And those are the little ones. Those are the ones that are part of the true heroes. You'll see maybe in time, who those true heroes were. It wasn't those whose exploits are celebrated through history. It's going to be ones that we overlooked, or even ones that those heroes of history may have trampled upon to gain their goal. So that's why, when we have the soul posited, and you see that soul in the image of God and the delicacy of it, and that is where this heroism takes place, and is chosen in love. Then when you work with that soul, you have to realize the delicacy of it, the mystery of it, hold it in reverence and awe. That's why we don't work for the state. Really? I'm going to turn over the study of the treatment of the soul? Be managed by the state? I don't have my children's education be to them, or much less that. It's not going to happen, man. It's silly. So the state, you can't do that. That's why we have strict confidentiality. For us, it's not about legality. It's not about which could be anything. It's about true morality and truly do no harm. So this seeing that soul that way guides everything. If you don't have that, and if and a clinician doesn't have that, there's no way that anybody should come within, 10 feet from that person, because this is not, it's bad medicine. Now, again, I would like to say that there are a lot of good folks out there, good Christians that are practicing in the mental health system. And they do a lot of good work to help people, but they do it in spite of the system. They do it in spite of the conceptualization. They're good clinicians, they're intelligent, they have all these skills, they're great, but they do it in spite of the system of conceptualization. You have to compromise, you just have to. But in this system, this works, if you will, in spite of the clinician. So it facilitates the process. It allows him, whoever that clinician is, really to fulfill whatever credential they have. But again, it's based on the conceptualization on the system. And again, if you have to submit everything in that person, no matter how much you reverence them in the session, if you have to turn over everything you ever wrote on them, to the state, which have to keep it for archived and turn over for any reason, well, you're not really reverencing that soul. You're selling it out.
And I know you've seen that firsthand based on your clinical experience, and we can probably talk about that in another episode. But I think that's just about all the time we have for today's episode. I just want to remind people, if you want to learn more about psychomorpholytics, if you need help from a clinician, or if you want to become a clinician yourself, we are opening up the fall semester. The first time we've ever done this, the Institute of Psychomorpholytics is going online in fall of this year, and we hope you can join us for that. And the website is souldeepscience.com. Dr. Dilsaver, thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you all in the next episode. God bless.
Peace be with you all.